Welcome to those who are joined. We'll just give it another couple of minutes just to wait till those join, and then we'll start the webinar. Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Before we proceed, please note that this webinar will be recorded by AEMO and may include the use of AI support. The recording will be published online, including the slides presented. By attending the webinar, you're consenting to AEMO recording the session and using the recording for this purpose. No other recording, including the use of any AI functionality or transcription, is permitted. So I'll hand over to our Group Manager of Onboarding and Connections, Margarita Pimentel, just to give us a welcome to this webinar.
Hi everyone. Look, just a big welcome to everyone joining us today. I can still see the numbers notching up, so there's a few more to come, I think. Look, in terms of the onboarding and connections group within AEMO, our aim is really to work with you in partnership in your connections, registration and commissioning processes. I'm going to keep this short because all I really wanted to say is thank you. You've made a huge contribution to enabling what we hope is a step change in our commissioning practices. We've been able, you've lent us your expertise, learnings and time. You've been able to problem solve with us in real time. You've just given us all of your energy and your ideas. And most importantly, you've really lent in to trial and test this with us in the real world. Without your support, I don't think we'd be here today. And so I really just wanted to acknowledge that. I'm actually going to hand over back to Laura, actually. I nearly got that wrong. I'm going to hand back to Laura and she's going to kick us off.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Margarita. And thank you everyone for joining us for the second webinar in the Connections Reform Initiative webinar series. This will be focusing on the Commissioning Guideline and Toolkit. My name is Laura Murphy and I'll be your facilitator for today's webinar. And on behalf of AEMO and the CRI project team, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us. I'd like to flag that AEMO is hosting one more webinar in this series. That would be the optional pre-application support services webinar, and that is being hosted on the 24th of February. We'll share a link to that webinar following this event in an email. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, seas, water and across Australia. We honour the wisdom of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders past and present and embrace future generations. We acknowledge that wherever we work, we do so on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander lands. We pay respect to the world's oldest continuing culture and First Nations people, deep and continuing connection to country, and hope that our work can benefit both people and country. We'll be using Slido today for the session for questions and answer. So please don't use the Teams chat function. You'll be provided with a link to Slido either in the QR code that's on the screen. There's a code also that you can log into the Slido website, but we'll also be sending you another link via the Teams chat so you can access it via that link. We'll be collecting your questions at the end of the session and responding to them through the dedicated Q&A. So we'll also present this QR code again, so if you do miss it now, it will be presented later in the session. Now, our agenda for today. So the agenda will be as follows. We've had our welcome and we'll be going through the objectives of the session. Then we'll move into an introduction of what the work stream is for the Commissioning Guideline and Toolkit, the guides and also the principle. Then we'll moving into a more technical explanation of the commissioning process, the framework and the toolkit, and then onto our last piece of the webinar, which will be our Q&A. The webinar is currently scheduled for an hour and a half. We'll hopefully try and leave about 30 minutes for questions and answers, and those that we can't get to and we do run out a bit of time, we'll follow up with you after this session in a dedicated feedback for the Q&A. Our objectives for today. So we'll be presenting an overview of the Commissioning Guideline and Toolkit. We can also send you a link to where those deliverables and resources are on the AEMO website. And after that, we'll be going into our Q&A. So I'll allow you some opportunity to have a discussion with our project team and our SMEs. Our presenters today will be Erica Twining, who's the Manager of Connections Reform, and Akhil Goswami, who's the Manager of Commissioning. So as I mentioned, we've got our SMEs and project team also on the call. So if we do get any more detailed questions, we can also call them in to answer and help provide a response. So for now, I'll hand over to Erica to provide us with an introduction of the guideline and the principles.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, everyone, for attending this workstream, and thanks to everyone who's been involved in the evolution of our new commissioning guidelines and trialling these principles on your real projects and feeding learnings back in, as Margaret mentioned. So the commissioning workstream was initiated under the Connections Reform Initiative way back in 2023. And it kicked off with an independent review of the existing commissioning processes. Part of that review was to seek feedback from industry, from a range of stakeholders and segments of industry. And some of the things that we heard on the way were that the commissioning process, there was inconsistency in the application of the commissioning process, both between parties, but also across technologies. It was time consuming and uncertain about how long commissioning would take. There was duplication of testing across multiple levels with no clear purpose. Scope creep, tests being added to the scope of the commissioning program as it evolved, and very onerous reporting and overlay requirements. There's also a lack of flexibility and transparency in how proponents be doing their testing, but also a lack of clarity as to why those tests were required. The roles and responsibilities were unclear across the proponent, the NSP, and AEMO. When issues were found on site, that typically resulted in more being added to the template rather than educating the industry about the issue and ensuring that it did not reoccur in future. Designing out the problem is what we would call it. So, and also resourcing. Stakeholders really valued having a single point of contact through their commissioning phase who understood the project and understood the technology that was being commissioned. Thanks, Laura. So, as I mentioned, this started in 2023 with the independent commissioning review. And we have been since then working with our focus group, which was formed under the Connection Reform Initiative, and also on real projects. So real proponents who have been generous enough to trial these ideas that we've had around streamlining commissioning and evolve them as we went. So we've been implementing this as we go, and we're seeing real benefits to achieving output sooner and less issues along the way. So following all of those focus groups and trials, we sat down to capture our learnings in a new commissioning guideline, which is really principle-based, and a supporting toolkit, which provides some of that more detailed guidance with detailed examples and test procedures. We thank those who contributed to the drafting of that guideline and also the review and productive feedback that you've provided along the way. So if we look at the next slide. Thanks. So some of those challenges we've looked to address. I'm just finding my notes here. One moment. So in response to those challenges, we've done a really deep dive review on all of those tests that were outlined in the existing commissioning guidelines. We've consolidated all of those guidelines into a single principle-based guideline that outlines the commissioning framework and a supporting toolkit which provides those detailed examples and test requirements. The commissioning framework, which is captured in that guideline, is intended to be flexible, collaborative, and fit for purpose. It recognises that one size doesn't fit all, and that the testing scrutiny that is applied to a plant that is perhaps 1,000 megawatts should not be the same as the scrutiny might be applied to a 5 megawatt plant, which has no impact on system security. So the guideline also aims to clarify the roles and responsibilities across the proponent and the NSP and AEMO. And as many of you are already aware, we have recently established a dedicated commissioning team within AEMO. So this recognises that commissioning requires a unique skill set, and dedicated resources are required to facilitate the volumes of connections that we're expecting over the next few years as part of the energy transition. Akil, who will go into the technical details of the new framework, is the manager of this team. He's really committed to continuous improvement within his team, but also supporting industry to adapt to this new commissioning framework. Thank you. Okay, so the guideline itself is designed to help proponents meet their obligations under National Electricity Rules, Clause 5.8, and it's intended to be the primary reference when preparing a commissioning program and working through the commissioning process. It's written mainly for proponents connecting new or altered generating systems, integrated resource systems, synchronous condensers, but it also supports developers, OEMs, NSPs, consultants, and AEMO teams in understanding their roles across commissioning. The guideline sets out the 3 core objectives for plant commissioning as demonstrating compliance with performance standards, showing that the plant can operate reliably and safely in the power system, and ensuring we collect high quality data for model validation. It's a principles-based program which can be flexible and tailored to the plant impact, and it operates within the existing NER parameters while clarifying the responsibilities of AEMO, NSPs, and proponents. The guideline seeks to facilitate development of a commissioning program that is fit for purpose, considering the plant's impact on the power system and network users, allows the plant to proceed to full output efficiently, including for variable energy source plants making effective use of energy source availability. It promotes timely and efficient monitoring and reporting, which is consistent with the time sensitivity of the matter that's being assessed. And at completion, it ensures that the plant has sufficiently demonstrated its suitability to operate and comply with its performance standards on the network, as well as providing sufficient data for dynamic model validation. Thanks, Laura.
Has that moved forward?
Yeah, what's happened? Is Laura frozen?
No, it's me who's got the control. Has that slide moved forward?
Yep. No, it has not.
Oh, okay. Apologies. I'll stop sharing and share again. Can you see it up on the screen now, Erica?
Yep.
Should be on slide 11 now with principles of developing a commissioning
Yeah,
program.
I finished that.
Oh, okay. Next one.
I'm going to hand over now to Akil to take you through the detailed commissioning process.
Thanks, Erika. And thanks all. Welcome all again, part of this industry webinar. It has been a great journey over a year, working through this commissioning guideline, collecting the industry feedback, working through it, working the challenges and filling the scope gap. What we've done is, as part of the consolidating the guidelines, as we know, there are a few documents sitting on the AEMO website, which we're in currently use. Namely on the left hand side of your screen. As part of this new commissioning framework, we have consolidated the previous guideline into single document. So all the documents that you see that were published on the website from 2012 to 2021, they will be replaced by this new guideline supported by the Commissioning Toolkit. The new guideline will be based on the principles as Erica touched base on, with clear testing outcomes and improved flexibility in testing processes and methodologies. This guideline or the framework will also provide a fundamental framework for developing a commissioning program which will be an optimized testing and reporting regime. As we know, any commissioning or the construction phase doesn't go without any challenges or variations in the construction staging or the causing the delays. So we have also covered some guidance around how do we manage the changes during the commissioning phase itself. And more importantly, the objective of this commissioning framework is to have a consistent and efficient NAM-wide approach to commissioning practices under NER 5.8. That would be principle based and also quite important without compromising the power system security and operability. This guideline is also supported by the Commissioning Toolkit, which would be a pool of templates in the Word form or the Excel form, which can be edited. And this toolkit will also act as a live portal, where as we go along in the journey of commissioning in future, we learn the lesson. We will also update these templates moving forward as well. So commissioning guideline, as mentioned earlier, it's a clear requirements for any if you're doing any commissioning of the generating system or the integrated resource system, including synchronous conditioner. That's when the commissioning guideline will need to be referred. There are 5 components or the 5 sections into this guideline supported by the appendices. Chapter 1 is the introduction, which will provide the context of the application or the scope of the document. Chapter 2, commissioning framework, will provide the fundamental framework of developing a commissioning program, which will be supported by the chapter 3, which is the important aspect, which is the test categorization. Test categorization section will actually talk about the various test category and how to and when to use them. Number 4, the section 4 will be developing a commissioning program, which will talk about how to develop the commissioning program from the draft. This section also talks about a high or the low impact plant, including their impact threshold. This section will also have the examples given as well, and which will talk in detail in the next few slides around how to deal with the high impact plant and low impact plant. There would be some assessment criteria as well in this section. Number number 4 section developing commissioning program will also cover the alterations under the 539, as in how to approach the commissioning activity of any 539, could be a minor scope or the major scope. Section 5 will be undertaking the commissioning. So in the section 5, it actually describe the process elements and requirements when undertaking the commissioning, as in what should be the structure, what should be the pre-test simulation requirements, what should be the communication framework, communication strategy, what are the guidelines around the dispatch and the congestion consideration, what are the expectations from NSP and AEMO around the witnessing of the test. Reporting requirement will also talk about the expectations around when to do the overlays, when the test simulations are required. There would be reporting requirements as well. And also in the same section, there would be the challenges, how to manage any changes during the commissioning stage. That could be any delay to the completion of testing due to a delay in OEM OEM equipment, or how to manage the adverse security impact, including any non-compliances as well. This guideline will have the appendices as well, which will have default category of the various tests, in what test should fall into what category. It is important to note that this category would be default. That means based on the case-by-case basis or the location or the any local factors for the plant, this test category can be moved or the reshuffled around. Now, we have also included the high-level commissioning process map into this guideline. This will talk about this process would be remain similar to the current practice, but what we've done is in the guideline we have, as we know, there are several phases during the commissioning process itself, and every phase has got some joint responsibilities between AEMO, NSP, and proponents. There are steps as well, which includes a joint decision making between NSP and AEMO. This guideline will further break down into those category of the joint responsibilities, as in how to manage each phase between proponent, NSP, and AEMO. Mainly, we have shown here the minimal version of that process map. There's a detailed process map in the guideline itself. Mainly the 6 sections are here. What is the agree commissioning scope? Second session is the prepare and submit the commissioning program, commissioning plant lead up to full output, then auto model validation and ongoing compliance monitoring. So the first 2 can fall under the pre-commissioning activity. The 3rd and the 4th can fall into the actual commissioning phase, and the R2 model validation and the ongoing compliance monitoring, including operations, can be in the post-commissioning phase. I would like to actually point out a couple of things here. What we want to emphasize here is we want to do an early engagement as part of the pre-commissioning activity. That means NSP, proponent, and AEMO sit down together and agree the commissioning scope. Now, as per the NER 584, there is a requirement around submitting the draft commissioning program, which is a 3 months time frame, minimum 3 months time frame, and it's a 1 month for the distribution plant. As part of this commissioning guideline, we want to encourage doing an early engagement between all the 3 parties during the R1 stage when the draft program is submitted. The opportunity can be utilized and helpful in the down the line. The commissioning phase would be a lot of things can be actually finalized or agreed during the R1 stage itself, and that could include requirement of the pre-test simulations, a requirement of the overlay requirements, understanding the challenges from the proponent point of view as well, as in what are their the commercial implications around the system standard agreements, or there could be the requirement around the SIPs as well. There could be requirement around the run back scheme. So all that can be actually discussed early on, and that will actually benefit down the line in the commissioning process. Plus, it will actually help to reduce the number of iterations as well. The second point that I would like to highlight, and that's the pain point, that feedback that we received during the industry consultation, is auto model validation closeout. So normally when the plant reaches to the full output, normally R2 model validation actually takes a bit of a back burner in the process. So we have put some time-based information or the guidelines in this document, where once the plant is reached to the full output, the proponent and AEMO and NSP have to review the initial review of the R2 model validation and aim to close out within the 3 months after the initial review. So hopefully with this process map, there would be a clear roles and the responsibilities, and some of the pain points can be worked upon. As mentioned in the appendixes earlier, there are the main category of the taste that we have included in this framework. Is the first one is the checkpoints. So checkpoints we have included into the framework to focus on to the stability aspect of the plant. That means the taste like VREF, PREF, and QREF taste can be done into the stability under the stability umbrella under these checkpoints. The reporting requirements around the checkpoints are that we expect that there would be a rapid confirmation or the rapid reporting and approval when dealing with these checkpoints. Then we have the whole points category, which is similar to what we have right now. It's mainly focusing on to the security aspect or the security focused testing, which will talk about the compliance assessment and make sure that the plant is performing as per the agreed GPS. Now, the third category is the flexible taste, which means the taste which are non-security focused but still need to be compliant. For example, AGC or the PFR testing, those tastes can fall into this flexible taste category. The left-hand side, you can see there's a preliminary taste which is less than 5 megawatts. So this is nothing but similar to what we have under currently the whole point zero testing, but what we've done is because that the whole point zero has got different process and the reporting requirements or the arrangement requirements. That's why which are different than the interim whole points that happens during the higher megawatt level. So these are the four taste category that we have included into the overall framework. We'll talk in detail how we can actually utilize this each category. As mentioned earlier, there are default taste category mentioned into the guideline document under the appendices, where we have included the taste that should fall into each category for synchronous and the asynchronous, both the machines, and they can be discussed upon based on the requirement of the plant. So we've talked about the principles, we've talked about the different category of the taste. Now, what benefits this framework will bring? So what we've put together on the slide here is a bit of a comparison, conceptual comparison between the previous commissioning approach, which is in the dark red color, and then the new commissioning approach, which is in a greenish color. This graph actually shows the difference between how the plant will actually travel through the commissioning phase, reaching to the full output. As you can see in the graph, x-axis is a time unit. It's not a necessarily day, week, or a month, but it's just a simple time unit to keep it simple. And y-axis has got the megawatts on it. Now, the dark color red graph shows the previous commissioning approach, where traditionally you will start your testing at the whole point zero at the 5 megawatt. Then you go through the review and approval process, move to the whole point one, go through the review and approval process, move to the whole point two, again same process, HP3 and HP4, and then you'll reach to the full output at a, let's say, time unit of 24. Now, as you can see, this approach is a bit of a linear approach where you have to wait for the previous item to be completed and then move to the next sequence. Compare this approach with the new commissioning approach, where you would start at the preliminary test would be around 5 megawatt testing, where you talk about the settings confirmation or the model confirmation. Then the plant goes to the whole point one, which could be the 25 megawatt rating. And then once the whole point one is done, reviewed and approved, then you can implement the checkpoint one, which could be at the at the 80 or 90 megawatt. Checkpoints can be done quickly within 24 or the 48 hours. It's a 1 day or 2 days activity where you can just do the stability aspect of the plant, witness the testing, and then as part of the reporting, it can be submitted on the same day or the next day in terms of a PPC screenshot or any other technical memo. Once the checkpoint 1 is approved, the plant will allow to go to the next checkpoint 2. At the checkpoint 2, you can similarly do the stability testing and get the tech memo or the quick screenshots from the proponent, get an approval. And let's say at this point, at the checkpoint 2, you're operating at the checkpoint 2 and you're intending to go to the next whole point 2, but the lack of the wind resources is the problem or the challenge. So what you can do is, based on whatever the wind availability is there, you can actually carry out the flexible test that you did not do in the checkpoint 1 or the checkpoint 2, and that way the flexible test can be done at whatever the available wind resource or the sun resource is there. Flexible test can be done, and let's say when the wind picks up, you can do the testing at the whole point 2 level, which would be 200 megawatt. You can carry out the whole point 2 level testing, do your compliance checks, then start the reporting. And when the reporting is in the background, then you can actually do the flexible test while the HP2 reporting is in the background, and we can do the flexible test which will remaining at the whole point 2 level. And then once the flexible tests are approved, the plant can be released for the full operation. Now, as you can see, the benefits is the previous commissioning approach is a linear approach, while the new approach has got the flexibility, has got the parallel approach. The things can be done in parallel in the background as well, and there's a room for play when you have the low sun or the low wind conditions. This flexible test can be also utilized by the proponents if they are struggling with the lack of resources and they want to chop and change the resources. So the new approach will actually provide a sooner reaching to the full output without compromising the system security, plus giving a freedom and a flexibility in the overall commissioning approach. Assessing plant impact. So as we know, when we do the commissioning exercise, we have to constantly monitor the plant impact, what the plant impact has onto the network security. So it is very critical that we develop a commissioning program that is fit for purpose. During the focus group consultation and the industry consultation, we were asked to review and provide more clarity and guidelines how to assess the impact of the plant, as in low impact plant versus the high impact plant. Accordingly, based on that impact, how to decide the number of hold points and the checkpoints. This guideline will cover the objective criteria for distinguishing high and the low impact plant. In addition to that, we've also included the qualitative description around it. Along with the assessment criteria, there are used concept and examples of high and the low impact plant are also given, along with the number of hold points or the checkpoints required in each example. Now, if I talk about the definition of this low impact plant, so the low impact plant definition is plant that does not materially impact power system security or quality of supply if it becomes unstable or trips. While on the other hand, the high impact plant is the plant that could actually adversely affect the power system security and potentially may other network users as well if that plant was to become unstable or trips. Now there are criteria that we have suggested into the guideline when we, as in the impact, how to assess the impact of the plant, whether it's low impact or the high impact. So there are some criteria that we have put together based on the industry consultation. One is the voltage impact of the instability or the trip of the plant. So when the voltage deviation in the voltage over the full range of active power or the reactive power, then the impact of the tripping of the plant onto the voltage. That means considering megawatt actually injection or absorbing from or to the grid. Then also, if let's say there is a plant operating in a trip, what would be the impact of the trip of the plant onto the frequency? And there are some other local factors as well that we have considered, for example, could be the power swing from the plant, which could cause a transmission line or the interconnected trip. There are suggested thresholds based on the consultation that the 3% threshold onto the transmission voltage changes, 5% onto the distribution, and the frequency impact threshold of 0.15 Hertz deviation for the mainland and the 0.5 Hertz for the Tasmania region. Now, it is important to note that these are suggestions only, and the plant may be considered high impact or the low impact plant based on the local factors, based on the technology being used, or based on the location of the plant into the network. In the guideline, as mentioned, we have provided a few example. Structure has been created to illustrate various features and explain how an efficient commissioning program can be structured. The high impact plant example that you see on the screen is for a solar farm, for example. It's a 450 megawatt size plant. If the plant operating at 200 megawatt with a maximum reactive power supply, which could be around 39%, let's say if the plant would trip, then a 3% voltage change and the 0.15 Hertz frequency change would be imposed at the point of connection. That means this plant would have the 200 megawatt threshold. Now, the way we can structure the commissioning program for this high impact plant is that it would be good to actually get the confirmation of the model alignment and the settings confirmation at the HP 150 megawatt. We think that that would be a sensible addition for a plant of this size because it does have a potential impact onto the power system security. And it would be good to confirm the settings as a risk mitigation and control. And I think also any early identification of the issues in the model or settings would be good so that any repetition of the test can be avoided before the plant goes too far into the commissioning phase at the higher level. Now, at whole point 150 megawatt, the setting confirmation and the model alignment check can be included. Once the whole point 1 at 50 megawatt is reviewed and approved, plant would be allowed to go to whole point 2, 200 megawatt, which would be the next threshold. Now, as you can see, we mentioned this checkpoint 1 at 100 megawatt in the dotted line, which means that if the plant is of a new technology or there are concerns around the plant's technology based on the lessons learned in the past or ongoing testing at some other location, checkpoint 1 can be employed at the 100 megawatt to mitigate the risk. However, if not required, then checkpoint 1 can be omitted. Once the whole point 2 at 200 megawatt is reviewed and approved, based on the 200 threshold, the next testing can be done at the 400 megawatt. Now, at the 400 megawatt, the plant will not need to go into the depth of the whole point level testing at 400 megawatt. At this level, a checkpoint, which is a stability testing, can be utilized to confirm the stability aspect of the plant at the 400 megawatt level. This testing can be done in a couple of days, and the rapid confirmation will help in achieving the timeline. Once the checkpoint 2 is approved at the 400 megawatt, then there would be a requirement to do the last whole point, which will be the final whole point at the 450 megawatt level. Once the plant is tested at the full output, reviewed and approved, it can be released for full operation. I would also like to point out that the flexible test sitting at the bottom, which can be utilized to better manage any uncertainties around low sun or the low wind conditions, including any construction related, resource related delays or challenges. On the other hand, let's say we look at the low impact plant example. If a 50 megawatt plant is connected at the same location, now as the size of the plant is only 50 megawatt, which means it would not exceed the threshold. That means the plant can be tested at the 5 megawatt, and then the final whole point can be done at the 50 megawatt, which is the full output level. For a smaller low impact plant, this commissioning framework will create a much simpler arrangement. As Erica pointed out earlier, we need to start differentiating between the plant which is at 50 megawatt capacity versus 1 gigawatt, and do a fit for purpose commissioning program so that the objective of the whole framework is achieved. Just while we're talking about the low impact plant example, I would also like to share on this note that we have a recent real life project which is based in New South Wales, where the size of the plant is 25 megawatt, which is a solar based plant. And on that solar farm of the 25 megawatt, we are actually implementing this structure where we will do the 5 megawatt testing, preliminary testing, and then we will go straight to the 25 megawatt, do the whole point one testing. In this case, we don't need the checkpoints. We can just straight away do the 5 megawatt testing and jump to the final output, full output level, and do the final whole point testing. So we've talked about the commissioning guideline document. We also have the commissioning toolkit resource, which is going to be live portal, which will consist of various documents around the which will help the commissioning process overall. So this guideline, this toolkit actually will include the editable templates in Word or the Excel and examples that will help the proponents move through the commissioning process more consistently. It actually responds directly to the stakeholder feedback that we received during the industry consultation, where we need a clear, transparent reference point that streamlines the efforts by the proponents, NSP and AEMO. These templates will be optional. However, it can be utilized as required. So there are 6 documents in this toolkit. First one is the summary of the test template. So if I divide this 6 documents into the phase of the commissioning, so summary of the test template and the commissioning program template that can fit under the pre-commissioning phase, including the test library as well. And then the commissioning phase will have the communication test schedule template, test log template, and the whole point report template. Now, the summary of a test template will display the new framework in a Excel format. This would be like an on a page template where you can actually structure the backbone or the core of the commissioning program, depending upon how many whole points or the checkpoints or the flexible tests are to be required. You can actually identify the requirement based on the consultation with the NSP, AEMO, and the proponent. This template will also have checkboxes where any pre-test simulation requirement, reporting requirements, overlay requirement that can be agreed early upon in the R1 phase only, ideally 3 months before the commissioning to be kick off. And once these requirements are agreed upon, then it would be a good idea to start preparing the commissioning program, the draft template, so that we can avoid the number of iterations into the commissioning program. Summary of test template, I think, is going to be very handy tool to agree, let's say 80 to 90% of the commissioning program based on the information known at that time. Then a commissioning program template can go in detail, where the testing and the reporting requirements can be put it in. Risk control and mitigations can be also included in that commissioning program template as well. Commissioning program template will have reference to various test category as well. Commissioning program template can be utilized by the support of the test library. So the test library will provide the sample test descriptions to support the proponents to develop a commissioning program. This will include a list of the test with purpose, methods, and the assessment criteria. More importantly, combination of the test library and the commissioning program will give the program which is have a less iteration and less repetitions in it. Now there would be reference to the communication and the test schedule template. So communication structure would be mainly important to coordinate the daily test activity, as in whom to contact, who's the contact person, who's the primary engineers or the secondary engineer, who do we reach out to if there is an issue with the plant. They would have contact details of each parties involved actively and as a backup as well in that communication schedule. This would include the communication metrics, communication protocol, and commissioning timeline as well. The test schedule template would have the load profile of the template. That means what are the daily load profile, or what's the megawatt or the megawatt expected on the day of the testing, along with the mode of the testing, could be the V voltage mode or the Q mode. This information will be provided in the test schedule template. There would be guidelines around what are the requirements around submitting this test schedule template to NSP and AEMO as a minimum requirement. This test schedule template normally is required to be submitted 3 business days before the commissioning is scheduled, and there are guidance around, proponents should also consider any buffer as well for the bad weather conditions as well. So those information is also provided so that there are no the last minute changes can be avoided. Along with the test schedule template, there's a test log template as well, which will support proponents to record the test particulars during the testing. Those test log will provide a good record as in how the testing went or whatever the issues been observed, so that if required, those issues can be worked upon or included into the issue tracker register. Test log template would be the daily requirement. It is expected that the proponent will use the test log template and submit at the end of the each day of the testing to NSP and AEMO. Whole point report requirement. Proponents are also required to submit a whole point report to the NSP and AEMO at the end of completion of each whole point. We have put the template together for this whole point report template, where the intention is that eventually we want to use this template, improvise it, improve upon, and use it consistently across the NEM, so that it's one template being followed by everyone. This whole point report, as we know, will focus on to the compliance aspect of the plant and assessment aspect of the plant. This whole point report will also talk about any non-compliance management aspect as well. So the combination of these 6 toolkit resources moving forward, as mentioned earlier, this toolkit will be the live portal. So as we go along and commission the plant, there would be I'm sure there would be a lot of lessons learned along the way. There would be a lot of new technologies coming up. There would be grid forming based. There would be hybrid plants coming up. So eventually, if we think that there's a value to add a new template for the hybrid plant, for example, in future, we will keep updating and improvising this commissioning toolkit resource.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Akhil. Now we'll just highlight the next steps following this presentation. So it's been a high-level summary of the Commissioning Guideline and Toolkit. We encourage you to review the guideline and toolkit on our website. We'll send out a link to where they are located on the completions page on the AEMO site. This will also include a feedback form as well for how we have gone in this webinar, just to ensure we're continuously improving in the way that we're providing this information. If you do have any further questions to ask, please feel free to email the contact.connections@aemo.com.au email address. We're happy to address those following this webinar. In addition, we'll also send out a link to the optional pre-application support services webinar, which is on the 24th of February. So please feel free to register to that link. We're now going to move into our Q&A portion of the webinar. So I can see there's lots of questions already coming through on the Slido, and we'll try and get to all of them. And we've got about 40 minutes actually to address these. So hopefully we'll get through all of them. Please feel free to use the QR code or the code at the bottom of this Slido page here, and we will do our best to answer these. Now, there is a question that was put through from Dylan, just raising a point about the pre-energisation and the greater than 5 megawatt, that the requirement should be reconsidered as the nameplate rating of a single turbine or inverter nowadays already exceeds 5 megawatts. Now, this is actually the 5 megawatt limit as a part of the registration, exemptions and production unit classifications guide. And we do already have an initiative that's just commenced to be able to review and consider these changes in the technologies on the balance with the system requirements. So that's actually underway outside of this, this work stream. So we'll hopefully address that for you. Now, if we move to slide 17, Peter, we do have a couple of questions in relation to the whole point testing. So, Akil, I'll get you to answer these questions for us. So, we have a question regarding the timescale and what does it mean, and the timescale at the bottom of this graph. In addition, we have a question about the comparison that the previous method has 4 whole point tests, while the new method has 2 whole point tests. So we've raised that this is not an apple for apples comparison. Can you please explain?
I think I mentioned around the time scale. So time scale, it's not a days or the week. It is a simple time unit. I think the intention here is to compare the previous approach versus the new approach. So without going to the specific of the project, it would be challenging to actually decide the actual time frame. But I think the intention is to do a comparison between the previous commissioning approach and show that linear versus the parallel approach. But obviously, time frame will depend. A time unit will depend on the type of the project, size of the project, location, more importantly, and the technology as well, and what network you are in. So I think objective is to focus on to the comparison between the two. And what was the second question? Sorry.
We have the question around the time scale.
Yes, so I think I answered that question, unless there's a further question on that.
Oh, sure. So the question was regarding the comparison between the 4 whole point tests and the 2 whole point tests. Is there any further elaboration on that?
No, so I think it is. So again, if you would commission this 200 megawatt plant, most likely that there would be 4 whole points. And I think if you focus on to the sequence of the events as well, while if you look at the new commissioning approach, where we have employed the checkpoints 1 and 2, we've also shown the flexible test aspect as well, just to demonstrate that how actually new framework can be adopted if we have a plant coming up, which will actually save you time. So as you can see, the whole point 2 is achieved close to 13 time unit versus whole point 4 is achieved with 24 time units. So I think that's quite a difference. More importantly, the plant has reached to the full output. However, we also need to focus on the system security aspect, which are covered in the shape of employing checkpoints, flexible test, and hold points without compromising the system security.
And we have another question that sort of is on slide 17, Akil. So can you please clarify that no report is needed until the end of testing, as it shows no report shows till full operation?
So when you let's say, for example, if you do the whole point 2 testing and we are satisfied with the plant performance in consultation with the NSPs and the AEMO, we may let you operate at that level, right, while doing the reporting in the background. So again, this is a bit of a case by case we are talking about here, but I think intention is to do the reporting, and then once your flexible tests are done, then you can include the flexible tests as well in your reporting, and then submit the report, and then your plant is already operating at the whole point 2 level. So that's something that is trying to explain.
Right. Thank you, Akil. Now you have 2 questions that are perhaps similar, and maybe you want to respond in one. So first question will be about explaining the relationship between AEMO and the relevant state TNSPs. There is an example provided that there have been situations encountered where a TNSP has referred them to AEMO, and then AEMO has referred them to the TNSP. So the question is about which entity is the correct point of contact. Additionally, there is another question as well about whether an NSP will have the ability to add their own commissioning requirements, or is the new guideline intended to provide consistency across the regions?
So NSP and AEMO has the joint responsibility, and if you refer to the commissioning process map into the guideline, that will actually explain to you what are the responsibilities. There is no sole responsibility sitting with AEMO or NSP. When it comes to the requirement, the intention, and that's why we have been very careful in drafting this guideline, that we have allowed enough flexibility and the space for NSP's requirement to be considered as well. And that's the reason we have stick to the principle-based guideline rather than going in very specific aspect of the commissioning. In addition to this guideline, which is a principle-based, which can actually assist the proponents to develop a fit-for-purpose commissioning program, that also includes the requirement of the each relevant TNSPs or the DNSPs that are involved in here, because depending upon, there would be certain different requirement based on the electronet or the transcript. For example, electronet is at the end of the name requirement, so there are different mode requirements. And that's why, again, the default test category is a default test category. There's a room for play so that we can actually prepare the fit for purpose commissioning program. So to answer the question, it's joint responsibility, NSP and AEMO both.
Great, thank you. We have a question here from Dylan. So is a PS CAD model overlay required for any test other than the system event FRT? We've observed that some NSPs now require PS CAD overlays regardless of PSSE PS CAD benchmarking has been provided.
Yep, I think I'll let.
Yeah, maybe I can jump in. I'm Gamini. So we primarily based on PSSC because it's fast and quicker. However, if there is some issue like say excessive overshoot or some issue, maybe oscillations, we might need the PS CAD as well to verify, because PS CAD is more close to the plant performance, plant operation. So therefore, depending on the situation, we ask for PS CAD as well if there's an issue. Otherwise, generally PSSC.
Dylan, I think you've got your hand up, but we don't have microphones turned on for the participants of the webinar, unfortunately. So happy for you to provide another question through to Slido if you need further clarification, and I can ask the team. Just while we wait, we have another question that's been put through. For AC coupled hybrid facilities, what commissioning sequence does AEMO expect? Should PV and BESS be commissioned and tested independently first, followed by hybrid testing at each hold point /CP?
So on the hybrid facilities, I think it's a very specific question. Probably we can answer the question in a general sense here, but I have to be careful here as well that normally the hybrid template will be, that's a work in progress. As I mentioned here, we don't have current specific instructions of the guideline around how to manage the hybrid AC couple, including the DC couple as well, right? So probably that question we can discuss if you have any specific project. Probably that question can be discussed upon the specific project. Unless, Gamin, if you want to add something to that question.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's depending on the case by case, where usually we test the solar or the battery independently, and then we combine, and even combined we might test the 50% and 100%. So that's the current practice. And if it is existing solar farm, it's and if you're adding a battery into that, maybe we can test the battery, and because solar farm is already tested, then we might do the combine, and then we might have to take the aggregate dispatch components as well. So it depends on the case by case now, and we are planning to come with the guideline for those as well in the future.
Thank you. We've got a couple of questions coming through about checkpoint tests. So I'll try and combine them the best I can. So we have a question here about what is the trigger to get the next level of hold point tests, and is it successful checkpoint test of the successful flexible tests? And then combined with that, we also have a question around whether AEMO can confirm that the plant can stay at a checkpoint level if the plant shows stable operations during this test.
Yeah, usually the checkpoint successful completion of checkpoint is the requirement to move to the next level. So we have success criteria defined in the commissioning guideline. based on principles. So, and then once it is successful, then you can move on to the next level. Yeah.
So there are, if you see in the section in the guideline, there are critical success factor, which talks about the definition around the critical success factor. And then if those critical success factor are actually assessed and approved, then you can move to the next level of the whole point or the checkpoint.
And additionally, we have another question here that's related. So would there be an opportunity to formalize the maximum number and types of stability tests required at a checkpoint?
No, so I think the answer is that we don't want to do one program which actually fits all. I think the intention is to go away from that mindset. What we are trying to do is we want to look at the project starting from the basic principles, look at the impact of the plant, and then decide the structure of the checkpoint or the whole point. There is no fixed number of the number of checkpoints or the whole points required in any commissioning structure. However, you can utilize the examples given in the guideline. I think that will serve the good indications of what expect to happen.
Great. Now we've still got some more checkpoint questions coming through. So we've got a question asking what the difference between checkpoint and staging tests are. So it's mentioned that the staging tests are currently used in the NEM during commissioning. What's the additional benefit that a checkpoint will bring?
So I think there is another term as well. So staging test normally is used in the Transgrid New South Wales region. There is also one more term which has been widely used in the Queensland region, which is the stability test. I think the intention of this guideline, as I think someone asked a question, we want to actually make a consistent definition of the terms being used around the NEM. So checkpoints is more or less similar to the staging points into the New South Wales region and the stability aspect into the PowerLink region. There are certain requirements that PowerLink, the other Queensland TNSPs might consider to include certain testing into the checkpoints or the whole points. But again, that is a case by case basis and to be discussed on a project level. But to answer the question, checkpoint is similar to the staging and also the stability as well in the Queensland region.
Great, thank you. And now Dylan's provided a response back just due to our microphone situation. So Dylan's mentioned that he agrees that the PSCAD overlays may be required where PSFC results indicate issues. However, they've received requesting PSCAD overlays as a part of the R2 test plan that they would appreciate if AEMO could align with NSPs on this requirement. Is there any further comment that you would like to make, Akhil or Garmini?
Yeah, we noted that request.
Okay, thank you. Now we have another question here. So what is AEMO doing internally to bridge the gap between the connections team and commissioning team? We often find that there is a misunderstanding of performance, especially with overlays when AEMO reviews the whole point reports.
So I'll briefly touch on that aspect. So we have, again, the connection team, which is the R1 team, and the commissioning team, it's under the same division. So we have a common leadership in AEMO. We have established a handover process between the registration and the commissioning, in which each project is, before actually it goes into the commissioning stage, it gets handed over to the commissioning team based on the various requirement in the form, which talks about the oldest requirement, what's the status of the plant, what were the challenges, what are the issues that we need to be mindful, what's the GPS negotiation on that. So all this information, we bring ourselves up to speed, the entire commissioning team, before they start working onto the commissioning phase. More importantly, I think I mentioned earlier that we can get involved into the early stage during the R1 stage as well, if proponent is willing to early engage the commissioning team. So they don't have to wait until the commissioning kicks off. The early engagement, very fruitful early engagement, can be done early upon to facilitate the commissioning smoother. So handover process is there, and the early engagement is the answer.
Right, thank you, Akhil. We have a question here that the 3% voltage change criteria to the size, the magnitude of whole point is welcomed. Will it be assessed by AEMO/TNSPs in the WAN during R1, or is it the expectation for the generator to assess it in the PSCAD based on available data? So in bracket, known FL and XR.
Yeah, basically it's taken as a joint decision NSP and AEMO. We take the support from the connection team as well. So basically we do the piece, based on the simulations on PSCC, and then see what would be the impact on the connection point. Usually PSCC wide area studies is quite faster to conduct, and if we need further detailed simulations, then we go to PSCAD, but mostly based on PSCC wide area studies.
Thank you, Kamini.
I hope that answers the question.
Given full output is reached sooner, is there an opportunity to fast track the R2 model validation report with a whole point that is not final? Example, say full output is reached at whole point 3, but there are 4 whole points.
Just a second.
Not sure whether I get it correctly.
Yeah.
So usually, if we have 4 whole points, we go through one by one, and I'm not sure that we can read the full output by whole point 3.
I think, yes, so we will need the whole point report first, so that the plant has reached to the full output and the plant has released for operation. And then there would be 3 months requirement for the proponent to submit the R2 report, and then we'll take it from there. However, we would appreciate if the R2 report is coming sooner than 3 months. That will help us also to oblige by our guidance of 20 business days to do an initial review, and then we might achieve the R2 closeout sooner. So I think that's encouraged. But whole point report, full output, it's the first thing which will actually align our internal process of handover of the plant to the operations as well.
I hope that answers that question. Are there any formal requirements on reporting following a checkpoint test?
So there is no formal requirement as such. Normally, when we do the checkpoints currently in the form of the stability test, we get screenshots sometimes from the PPC. We get a tech memo about the plant performance. So I think we want to provide that flexibility to the proponents that they can prepare the report with the raw information, basic information that will actually help AEMO and NSP to approve the checkpoint sooner.
Right. And is this all provided in details in the guideline, Akil?
Yes.
Great. And are all projects going forward using this new commissioning process?
Yes, so if you have any upcoming project and if you want to jump onto it, feel free to engage with NSP and AEMO. And even if you have any other questions after you go through the guidelines, after today, go through the 50 or 55 pages. And if you have any questions before you want to talk about the project specific, reach out to the team members in commissioning, and then we'll take it from there.
And does this apply to projects that are in renewable energy zones?
Yes, so this would be facilitated for the upcoming project into the renewable zones as well.
Right, thank you. Now we've got less questions coming through now, so we'll just get through the last couple and then pause to see if there's any more. So we've got a question here that, is there a requirement for AEMO and the NSP to provide feedback after the R2 submission? Currently, it appears that no response is good news.
Yeah, so specific around that point, we have included that time frame around the R2 closeout. So what happens is once the plant reaches the full output, proponent will submit the R2 report within the 3 months. Once we receive the R2 report, AEMO and NSP would have 20 business days to do an initial review and provide the comments just to go through the R2 package to make sure that we provide the initial comments, and then once the initial comments are submitted after the 20 business days, then between Proponent, NSP, and AEMO, I think our aim is to close out the R2 the 3 months after that.
Great, thank you.
And sorry, Akhil, I think it's probably fair to just acknowledge the fact that we have had a backlog in R2 historically, and so that is something that we're putting some extra focus into clearing, and also putting some extra focus into expediting that R2 process.
Yep.
Great, thank you, Akhil and Margarita. There's a mention here that they guess the intention is to be more transparent, but reviewing case by case means more delays and more uncertainty. Any comment on this?
So I think it's a difficult balance to achieve from AEMO and NSP point of view. But what the intention or the objective is guideline is that, number one, we don't compromise the system security, right? And we have given the principles into the guideline, and also that's why we've given the examples as well. So provided the principles are ticked off and examples being followed, the local factors of the plant, the size, the location, the technologies considered, then we're hoping that this guideline will achieve its purpose, where the commissioning phase will be reaching full output sooner, while also maintaining and assessing the plant's compliance to the network.
Now, Ali Roses said, thank you, AEMO team, for your work. Just for industry clarification, commissioning has 3 major steps: cold commissioning, hot commissioning, including SAT, and grid compliance commissioning. The guideline is for the last part. Is that correct?
Yeah, so guideline is for the generators and the SynCon once the plant is registered. So I understand that on the site there would be a lot of transmission assets commissioning, there would be harmonic filter commissioning, there would be protection system commissioning, but this guideline will focus onto the generator aspect, synchronous, asynchronous, and the SynCon once the plant is registered and move into the commissioning phase. Anything before that, which is cold commissioning, pre-commissioning, hot commissioning, that is not scope of this document.
Okay. And we have a question regarding data centers. So is the guideline applicable for data center projects, or is there a different guideline for data center connections?
No, this guideline doesn't include the data center as a scope. That work could happen in future, but currently it's not the case.
And look, probably just worth noting that data centers are relatively something that we're still trying to get our heads around. We're working with the AEMC at the moment around technical requirements for data centers, and we are engaging with NSPs around that as well. And so that'll probably be our first focus, and then we'll probably move on to what other aspects do we need to look at in the context of making sure that connections process is streamlined.
Thank you. Do AEMO have any plans to improve response times during both model validation and actual commissioning steps? An example, would consideration be given to additional resources being provided, or weekends? This is sometimes critical for projects.
Akhil, do you want me to take that one?
Yes, Margarita. Sorry, I was on mute actually. Yep.
No, you're okay. All good. So it's probably not a request that we receive very often. We have received those requests at times. And when we have received those requests, we've actually worked with the proponent to do as much as we can to accommodate what the timeline that they're trying to achieve, so potentially working after hours or working on weekends. But we're also quite conscious of just making sure that we're looking after the health and well-being of our team as well. It is something that we have flagged that we just need to think about, depending on the kind of demand that we see for that. We may think about whether or not we need to structure our team in a way that enables a rotation between different shifts, but at the moment we haven't really seen that demand.
Thanks, Margarita. We have a question regarding existing projects that are going through commissioning tests and are in whole point 1. So does this apply to those projects?
Yeah, please correct.
Go on, Gavin. Go on.
Usually megawatt limit and the number of inverters are related. So there's an inverter limit as well. Yep.
And the megawatt limit of each whole point, does AEMO care on the number of inverters online? For example, 5 inverters can achieve that megawatt limit on a whole point, but have a 6th inverter online with 0 dispatch. Is that fine?
Usually like depending on the situation, we might agree on like plus minus 1 or 2 inverters. Sometimes there could be an inverter fault, like say for a checkpoint, if we say we need 30 inverters, but if there is only 29 inverters, so we consider the situation and we agree with that if that inverter takes quite a lot of time to repair it and bring it back. So therefore, we are a bit flexible on that aspect, and usually we plan for the megawatt limit, but inverter numbers are also related to the megawatt limit. So it's quite a thing to each other.
You, Kamini. Will there be any guideline for load performance like hydrogen plants?
That's something to work upon in future, but currently this document doesn't have the scope of the hydrogen plant at this stage, but something that we need to consider in future if there is a feedback from the industry moving forward, and we see the requirement of working on it.
And I think possibly just to also note that we do have a connections pipeline, and we do look ahead in terms of what are the emerging trends around technologies. And so if we see that we're receiving more applications related to hydrogen load, then we would be looking at how we would be assessing those.
Right. And we have a final question that's been put through to Slido. So R2 closeout users used to be solely AEMO's responsibility. NSPs are not involved. Will it be the same moving forward?
No, so with the R2 closeout, it's the NSP and AEMO's both responsibility to review and approve the R2 closeout. So we work closely with the other NSPs in the NEM when we get the R2 report. So it's a joint responsibility that you can actually see and confirm into the process map as well into the guideline.
Thank you, Akhil. I don't think we have any more questions that have come through into Slido. So we can move through to our final slide. So thank you very much to everyone who has joined us today for our webinar. We really appreciate you coming and asking lots of great questions. If you do have any further questions, please send us an email at contact.connections@aemo.com.au. We'll send you an email following this webinar with a copy of this pack, links to the relevant documentation, in addition to a feedback form on how we've gone with this webinar. And please join us for our optional pre-application support services webinar on the 24th of February. We'll send you that registration link as well. So we'll close at 10 minutes early for this webinar. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.